You're probably wondering what Minecraft could possibly have to do with snorkeling. That's a valid question. But this is the story of how playing Minecraft, having a best friend who's an experienced caver, and my love for snorkeling all led to me dangling 220 feet from a rope underground in the dark and coming face to face with a giant beaver underwater.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
So there's this niche indie game called Minecraft. You might have heard of it. Basically, you survive in a blocky world while exploring, gathering materials, and fighting monsters that live in the dark. My favorite thing about the game is the exploration. Despite everything being made of cubes, there are genuine moments of stunning beauty and wonder contained within this infinitely rendering, pixelated universe. The best biome to explore in Minecraft is arguably the caves. The best creatures, resources, and adventures always happen in these yawning caverns beneath the surface of the world. So I thought to myself, what would it look like to experience this kind of adventure in real life, in my own way? Which, if you're familiar with the channel, means taking my underwater camera with me. It just so happens that one of my best friends is a highly experienced caver, so I called him up. Hey bro, you got any water in those caves?
Yeah, bro.
Sweet. So just like that, we're headed to cave country. I've got a feeling this is going to be a wild one, so I hope you guys enjoy Minecraft caving in real life, and I will see you underground and underwater. This is my friend David. He's incredibly knowledgeable when it comes to caves and climbing, and none of this video would have been possible without him. Friendly reminder that caving is extremely dangerous. Never go into a cave unless you have someone who is highly experienced and familiar with the area. I actually fully trust David with my life, probably more than any other human on the planet. In Minecraft, you always have to gear up before heading out on a cave exploration. This is true in the real world as well, as the cave we're headed to requires some particularly special equipment. David also had to refresh me on some techniques and safety tips before this first adventure. Just a little before sunset, we grabbed our gear and began our long hike to the cave. This area was once scheduled for a commercial development, but the local caving community was concerned it would impact a critical nearby cave system. This concern was ignored by local officials who said the cave system was too far away to halt the development. So, a small group of cavers banded together, scoured the land, and found the cave we're headed to on the site, successfully bringing the development to a halt and protecting the landscape. It was a decent trek to the middle of nowhere, I'm not going to lie. I was of course reminded of the endless chunky mountains you have to climb over in Minecraft to get anywhere in the game. So the sun is set. It's getting dark, but it doesn't really matter because we're going in a cave, and it doesn't really matter whether it's day or night down there. If you're wondering why we have this insane amount of gear, that'll make sense soon. But we're going to keep going and get to the cave number 1. So, as a caver, how familiar are you with Minecraft?
Surprisingly, very unfamiliar.
That's fair. This information was a devastating blow, but I powered on. Alright, I am gassed, but we are here. Wow, yeah, it really does look like absolutely nothing.
So you get right there.
Dang.
Yeah.
Little magical hole in the woods. I have short hair right now. That would not have been possible. This is not a normal part of my everyday gear prep. I need this gear because this unassuming hole in the woods hides a 220-foot deep vertical cave. Unlike in Minecraft, we don't have any elytra, and the water bucket method does not work in real life. In the real world, if you fall, you do not respawn, you die. So safety is kind of a big deal. Thankfully, David knows exactly what he's doing. We gave a final update to some friends on our plans for the evening and got ready to descend into this vertical cave.
Alright, so in just a minute.
Alright, pull and set. Camera's ready to go down. Here goes nothing. Stalactites and massive flowstone formations surrounded me as I rappelled down the rope into the underworld. All the way down there. The water trickling steadily off the formations hurtled to the floor below like rain, creating the sound of a constant dull roar in the background. Before my feet even hit the ground, my first thought was, this place is a cathedral.
Yep. Here.
The walls were lined with strange structures carefully crafted over a millennium by water, rock, and time into shapes that were reminiscent of Gothic architecture. The cave was a relatively small room that didn't lead anywhere horizontally, but just stretched vertically for what seemed like forever. Water cascaded down from above, landing loudly in a shallow, plateaued pool at the top of the room. There's no lava in these caves, like there often is in Minecraft, but the mesmerizing appearance of the flowstone, and its glow in the light of our headlamps, made it a decent equivalent. Flowstone forms as water runs across the surface of the rock and carbonate material is deposited. They are generally composed of calcite. David had to show me how to walk carefully along it so as not to damage it. Alright, look at this right here. At the base of the waterfall. How cool is that? A surprising number of spring salamanders had made their home in the pools at the bottom of the cave. And for being at the bottom of a cave, these guys were big. That's a little unexpected. This is a very big salamander. About as big as my hand. Another salamander had also made its home down here. A slimy salamander. Yes, that's what they're actually called. Despite missing his tail, he appeared to be living his absolute best life. They may not have been actual axolotls, which live in Mexico, but for the southeast US, I'll take it. We also found this tiny ringneck snake that had somehow wound up all the way down here. I unfortunately did not bring my mask down here because I wasn't expecting there to be this much water out here, but I can still show you guys underwater still. We didn't bring this big camera down here for nothing. We're going to see what this pool looks like at the bottom of this amazing cave. The water was clear but had a faint haze to it, which makes sense knowing how much rock the water flows over before collecting into this pool. At the bottom of the pool, which was only about 2 feet deep, there was a pile of woody debris, likely washed in from above during rainstorms. The pieces of wood were smooth, almost like driftwood, as they decayed 220 feet underground in the dark. I was hoping to film a spring salamander underwater, but the pools where they were hanging out were just way too shallow, and we didn't want to touch them. But in a wild stroke of luck, one salamander finally left the shallows and swam out into the pool. Spring salamanders are typically found along mountain streams, but some have adapted to life in caves. This population seems to be doing pretty well at the bottom of this pit. These robust sallies are accomplished little predators and will eat insects, other vertebrates, and even cannibalize each other. In fact, the last time David was here, he saw one with another salamander tail hanging out of its mouth. It was awesome to get a glimpse of them using this very specific underground freshwater habitat. But it wasn't long before this fella decided to head back to shallow waters. Since I have my underwater camera here, I decided to get creative and put it directly under the waterfall looking up. The result was way better than I thought it'd be. My dive lights illuminated the falling water droplets, creating a scene straight out of Star Wars before you make the jump to hyperspace. and give the cave water a try.
Yeah.
I'm a little biased because it was a long hike to get here, but I give it a solid 8 out of 10. It's pretty minerally, but it hits the spot. By now it was time for us to say goodbye to the spring salamanders in this beautiful, eerie cave. I strapped into my ascender rig and began slowly climbing 220 feet of rope. I'm incredibly grateful to the determined group of cavers who could see the beauty in these ribbons of darkness and did their part to keep this subterranean cathedral from being destroyed. As I neared the top, there was a small alcove that had some pale-looking fungus growing in it. It reminded me of glow lichen in Minecraft, but other than that, I have no idea what it was. Alright, as I'm coming out, look who's here to greet me. Okay, salamander. Pretty cool. I wonder if he knows he's like 220 feet above the bottom. Holy cow. Whew. Climbing up 200 plus feet of rope is no joke. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
By this point, it was about midnight and we began the trek back to the car in the dark. In Minecraft, you can keep bouncing from one cave to the next absolutely worry-free. But in the real world, there is a risk of transmitting diseases when traveling between cave systems. White nose syndrome is a disease caused by a fungus that has devastated bat populations in the southeastern US. Unfortunately, all the cave systems we are visiting have already tested positive for white nose syndrome. But it's still important to practice clean caving, so that means we have to rinse the mud off all of our equipment before entering a new cave system. We no longer needed climbing gear to access the next system of caves. This time, we just needed a canoe. So the next cave we're headed to is across this lake here. So we gotta get all our gear, load up in the canoe, and then we'll head out. Also, Zach is joining us. Not to be confused with Zach from my other videos, but Zach M is with us today. Last night I had to get into my wetsuit dry, and that was a painful process. Thankfully, I can get it wet this time. It will be so much easier. So good to get one more rinse in before going in the cave. The boys have blessed me with the role of passenger princess, so we'll take turns.
I was driving at night.
As we reached the far side of the lake, the rocky shoreline indicated we were getting close to our destination. Then we saw it. The yawning mouth of a stunning cave loomed in the distance. Water was flowing out of the cave and into the lake. It was pretty surreal paddling into the mouth of the cave. However, we didn't get very far before the cave narrowed and the canoe wouldn't fit. So we parked on the side and got our gear ready to explore. We decided to explore as far as we safely could on foot first before coming back to grab the camera to snorkel. The roar of the water spilling out of the cave was deafening. We straddled the canyon and made our way back through a narrow tunnel that followed the shallow, rushing stream. It just keeps going.
Yeah, buddy. This is great.
At the back of the cave, Zach carefully worked himself through this squeeze to scout ahead, but this was where we decided it was time to turn back. Not a good place to be.
Nope.
Drinking alcohol. Carry it out. Yeah. On the way back, as we neared the mouth of the cave, we noticed a big pile of guano, which is bat poop, and nearby a couple tiny bats were clinging to the roof of the cave. We didn't get too close to them as we didn't want to disturb them, but now it was finally time to get to cave snorkeling. Good?
Yeah.
In Minecraft, the goal of caving is usually to locate and collect valuable loot like diamonds, but the treasure I'm after is basically just any aquatic wildlife I can find. Got my diamond armor. I don't have a pickaxe, but I do have this. It's been a decent bit of rain recently, so water levels are up. A lot of the creatures are kind of hunkered down because of how fast the flow is coming out of the cave. But we're gonna get in and see what we can find regardless. Right off the bat, I noticed quite a bit of sandy sediment along the bottom. It formed these wavy designs, not unlike what you might encounter at the beach. But as we've already seen, groundwater fueled by recent rains was rushing out of this cave with impressive speed, carrying with it lots of sediment. So we weren't working with the best visibility, but we were still making do. I reached the back of the mouth of the cave where the walls narrowed and turned down a miniature canyon. The current here was pretty strong, so I had to work hard to continue moving upstream. Along the underwater walls of the canyon, I spotted this small sunfish. It looked fairly drab in the hazy water, and I'm not positive what species it is. In Minecraft, you can find tropical fish in caves, which is weird to me because you'd think tropical fish would be along like a coral reef, for instance, but anyways, it's quite the contrast from the drab little sunfish I saw. But speaking of colorful fish, a golden flash caught my eye. It was a yellow bullhead catfish. These fish have white whiskers or barbels on their chin that help them taste and smell their environment as they search for food. Pretty handy when navigating a dark environment like a stream in the mouth of a cave. Things were getting pretty tight in the canyon as I neared the first cascade. The water left its mark on the rocks, creating intricate designs in the stones below me and on the walls that closed me in on either side. As I looked above the surface, I could see water dripping off the formations along the wall, the beginnings of future stalactites. I reached the cascade and was just absolutely getting hammered with water. The strong flow meant I probably wasn't going to find a lot of wildlife hanging out, as most creatures had retreated into the cracks in the rock to avoid the intense current. It's not an aquatic salamander, but there was a nice red cave salamander resting on a ledge by the waterfall. I stuck my camera in some of the tiny craters carved out by the water, but didn't see much in there besides some more colorful cave stones. I then let the current carry me back down the canyon and out into the wide open mouth of the cave. I was a little disappointed we hadn't seen more underwater wildlife, but the day wasn't over yet. David and Zach saw something along the hillside they wanted to check out, so we climbed the hill up above the mouth of the cave.
That's so cool, dude.
That's unbelievable. And sure enough, there was another cave opening. As we suspected, the cave connected to where we had just been, and we found ourselves right back at the mouth by our canoe. We said goodbye to this beautiful cave and headed around the corner to one final spot.
Oh, you're talking about when you squeeze through in the water?
Yeah.
In the wet pool.
This cave was similar to the last one, but about 1/10 of the size, if even that. However, this cave was pretty much level with the lake, meaning much quieter and calmer underwater conditions, and hopefully more wildlife.
We just pulled up in the cave, and no joke, a beaver just went in the water. So we'll see if we get lucky and run into him up there, but I'm trying to hurry.
As soon as I stuck my head below the surface, I could tell the visibility in this cave was significantly better. There was a surprising amount of tree limbs and trunks in the cave. This struck me as a little bit strange, but I didn't really think too much of it. There were a few fish hanging out here and there, stealthily darting in between the crisscrossed branches. In the distance, I spied a large boulder and went over to take a closer look. It was covered in tiny craters, carved out slowly and steadily over the years as water dripped from the ceiling, eating away at its surface. It looked like the kind of boulder you'd find on the moon. I continued deeper into the cave. My senses were extra heightened as I was keeping my eyes out for any movement at all. I'm not sure how I saw it, but a tiny motion caught my attention, and sure enough, a tiny crayfish was crawling about at the edge of the cave. You might think that unless you are seeing coral reef levels of fish, that snorkeling isn't really worth it. I strongly disagree. I watched as this one-armed crustacean sifted through the substrate for tiny bits of food. Sometimes it's just nice when there's only one thing to look at underwater, because you can focus on the simple beauty of just that one tiny being. Not far away, another darker colored crayfish was also wandering about. There was also a small tuft of aquatic grass growing far back in the cave. I'm going to be honest, I have no idea what this is about, but it's super cool. What a place to be a plant. There were some bizarre looking formations along the wall of the cave, with small passageways that seemed to go in all different directions. One last wide open area of the cave, the floor was covered with tiny colorful pebbles. Hiding in plain sight amongst all the small stones, I spotted a young warmouth. These sunfish typically hide out amongst dense aquatic vegetation, but this individual had found a safe place here deep in the cave. When this warmouth grows up, he'll likely be out to eat the crayfish that share the cave. So better look out, little dude. You might be on the menu one day. By this point, I had pretty much given up on seeing the beaver. I mean, honestly, what did I expect in this dark aquatic labyrinth? There were a million places for it to disappear. For all I knew, it could have already swam past me out to the lake. But then, my eye caught a flash of movement, and that flame of hope was reignited. But first, let me back up a bit. David and Zach had kindly offered to let me snorkel ahead so that I'd have the best visibility possible. After waiting a little bit, they trailed up behind me. This is their perspective from the action camera, and also gives you a better idea of the environment we were working with. It was a tight squeeze for all of us, but especially so for me and my camera housing.
Which way? To your right or left?
To my right.
To your right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
At this point, I had briefly seen the beaver, and I was on high alert hoping to get any underwater footage at all. And then, as the others caught up to me, it happened.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh.
As the cloud of silt dissipated, the strange-looking face of America's largest aquatic rodent was staring right back at me just 3 feet away. The beaver was clearly locked in on me, and I was so excited I barely wanted to breathe. I could see its giant orange teeth poking out from its jaw. I have to say, being face to face with a beaver underwater gives you a whole new level of respect for these animals. And a cave was honestly not where I expected to encounter one. The beaver eventually climbed out of the water onto a small, dry area that seemed to be part of its lodge. It turns out there was an entire family living in the cave, as we saw at least 2 to 3 beavers.
Hey buddy, you're okay.
We didn't stick around too long, as we didn't want them to feel cornered. Suddenly, all the logs and tree branches made a lot more sense, and I even noticed fresh teeth marks on a few as we drifted back to the canoe. This was easily one of the craziest snorkeling experiences of my life.
I've heard of beavers living in caves, but when we first saw the first one, I thought that we just happened to come into the cave while I was in here, and then it turns out there's a whole family back there, which is crazy. I mean, that was one of the biggest beavers I've ever seen. Would you concur?
I mean, I have never snorkeled with a beaver before, or even been like underwater with one. Definitely a big fat guy.
Yeah, that was a healthy beaver for sure. Yeah, cool. Not what I was expecting to see in a cave, but hey, I'll take it. You got any thoughts, Zach?
It was an incredible experience. Very cold, but incredible.
Yeah.
We're shivering our butts off.
Yeah, I can't really feel my fingers right now. It's cold.
Cold but overflowing with absolute beaver stoke, we paddled back across the lake and into the sun.
Oh, that's good.
It's like coming face to face with a capybara. It's just the North American version of that. But I mean, it looks just like a capybara, just with a flat tail and a less stubby nose.
Just as Minecraft had led me to suspect, there's plenty of wonder and adventure to be had in real-world caves. After punching plenty of trees, and mining and crafting all sorts of different items, in order to beat the game of Minecraft, the player has to travel to the end and defeat a dragon. Once you've completed it, a long poem scrolls across the screen. There is one line in particular at the end of the poem that always stood out to me. You are not separate from every other thing. Although hundreds of feet of rock and dirt lay between our feet and the sprawling underground ecosystems beneath us, we're still a part of the same world. When we protect these subterranean realms and the salamanders, fish, bats, crayfish, and beavers that live in them, we protect our home on the surface, and ourselves. In Minecraft, you are one person mining and crafting resources from a nearly infinitely rendering universe. But in real life, we share a single finite planet with billions of humans and billions of other living things. In Minecraft, there's always another cave to be found, and you always get some kind of do-over when things go wrong. But we don't have that luxury in the real world. It can be hard to convince people to care about environments that are literally out of sight and out of mind. When we think of conservation, we often think of protecting iconic species and landscapes. But this adventure has inspired me to also care for the rare, dark, muddy, and unseen habitats and freshwater systems that lie deep beneath my feet. Minecraft wouldn't be Minecraft without caves, and Earth wouldn't be Earth without them either.
Well, there you have it. Minecraft IRL. I like both of them, but you only get the real life version once. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.